Hey everyone, Saduri here. I know it's been a long time since we've had a video, but I wanted to do another video on forgotten languages. It's been almost 5 years at this point since my last video. I know, forever. I promised more. I just kind of fell out of the habit though. And to be honest, I had outlets to talk about FL, kind of other than YouTube at the time, and it's past experiences with bringing up FL publicly, have been less than pleasant. I wanted a good relationship with Andrew and the FL team, and it just wasn't happening. And I felt like part of that was due to the fact that I was kind of publicly putting some of this on blast. But to be honest, I haven't been in contact with Andrew in quite a while. I sent him an email. I think my last email was 6 or 7 months ago, and he has not responded. He didn't respond too much before that. I would say I still, very much respect Andrew. But we've essentially, I feel I kind of don't have an outlet anymore to talk about FL really, but I still read it nearly daily. So I decided I'd start making another video. I read a comment on my prior video today, looking back at it, that asked me to please do re-review, given everything that's happened since the last video. And I thought that was actually a good idea, to get back into the swing of things. So I do kind of want to review what we talked about last time, only a short review, and then kind of go over some of the new articles that have been published, and just kind of talk about them. This is a very unstructured video. So I guess that's it. Yeah. Let me actually look up my Discord handle really quickly. You know what? No, I'll put it on here. If you are interested in talking to me more, it's just Saduri. Saduri on. There's a picture of a little snail on it. Feel free to look me up and friend me on Discord and shoot me messages. Yeah, I'm looking for other people interested in talking about FL. I read it nearly daily still. Still very, very involved with reading all the articles and kind of hashing everything out. Just really a huge portion of my time and my brain power in my life has been devoted to FL at this point. It's been probably about 5 or 6 years at this point since I had first discovered them and really started reading a ton about them. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more, please hit me up. But yeah, today we're just gonna go over some of the stuff. So let's jump right into it. So obviously, since the last time we've gone over the Chantilly poems, a ton has happened. We have had too much to list, really. I think the big ones are going to be we had COVID, of course, happen, which fits nicely in here. We've had Russia invading Ukraine happening. That's kind of a big one. It's, at least in my opinion, been a while since we've had such a war. Given past wars weren't based off of another, world power. They were more based off terrorism, in my opinion. Was kind of the old paradigm. And now we've got Russia invading places. So I would say those are the two big ones, amongst other things that I'm sure will come to mind as we go through these different articles. So this article, which comes from Targeting Calipers, which we talked about last time, this picture I think is, again, it was a very dynamic picture. If you post this today, people will be like, yeah, no fucking shit. I don't know if you remember this part from the last video we posted, but this picture blew people's minds. I posted it, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? When you posted this back in 2018, 2019, you're like, look at what's happening. They'd be like, what the fuck is happening? And now it makes complete sense. People would be like, yeah, why are you pretending to be edgy, bro? This is considered edgy now. It's not considered schizo, because because it just happened. Like, government crackdowns on civic space, that happened with COVID. And that's one of the interesting things about this picture. This picture has, an event in China listed for 2020 and a global disease listed for 2025. So there's a possibility that there's another round of global diseases that will be going around, other than COVID. That's something I wanted to talk about. It seems like possibly this global disease timeline was moved forward to 2020, right? But it does say this would kick off in China in 2020 and Russia in 2023, for destabilizations. Who's to say that, this wasn't moved up? Who's to say that this China, this destabilization in China was actually The Hong Kong protests, whereas and the global disease for COVID, was pushed up to 2020 as well. So there's no saying, but global disease has happened and we all lived through it. Russia in 2023, 2022, they ended up invading Ukraine. So the timeline on that was certainly moved up. I would say that seems destabilized to me. Russia is no longer a world superpower. Based off, you can argue. I would argue Russia is possibly no longer a world superpower. Looking at how their economy's gone, since they're kind of a lot of people are arguing they're kind of a satellite state of China. Some of the big talking points I've heard, based on that invasion of Ukraine. So certainly they're destabilized, and China was heavily destabilized, in part the Hong Kong protests, etc. A lot of the stuff going on with Taiwan, they're feeling very destabilized since then. California, not quite sure, what's going on there. Certainly, California gets a lot of crap, as it kind of should, for having a lot of issues. And Qatar, not entirely sure there. Norway kickoff. I don't know if Norway's gone anywhere since then. I certainly feel like there's always news reports of immigration happening into Norway that you hear about a lot. So, but anyway, yeah, that's certainly this timeline. It feels like that, if not sped up. That the big question is there still global disease in 2025? In my mind, catching up from Chantilly from a decade ago. Big question is, after a decade, does global disease happen in 2025 still? Or did it already happen, So, yeah, government crackdowns on civic space with COVID absolutely happened. Surveillance of digital activities. This one's a little bit harder, at least in my daily life, and reading the news. I have not seen an increase in surveillance of digital activities. I'm sure in some countries that has happened quite a bit. I have not felt this happening here. Breakdown of social protection systems, I would say absolutely. Once again, this has not happened as much in the U.S. I feel like our systems were robust during COVID, somewhat. Certainly people were hurting, but social protection systems in the U.S. have been fairly resilient in my mind. Whereas some other countries, namely I'm thinking of India, Sri Lanka, maybe. I know Sri Lanka was having a lot of issues with their economy around the time of COVID, where they were going into riots, I believe, and the government system was kind of breaking down. Certainly we know globally breakdown of social protection systems did happen, even here in America, to an extent. We had the COVID payments, but, there was not a lot that, a lot of government agencies that some people relied on for day-to-day living, could do to help through that period. And certainly people fell through the cracks that we maybe did not hear about, but they certainly did. Funding anti-establishment populism, the January 6th, insurrection on the White House, I think that absolutely ticks this box. That is anti-establishment, populism in particular, as anti-establishment populism, people trying to rise up and overthrow the White House, whatever you think of that situation, that's absolutely the label I'd put on that, and it was, it's grown. That sort of thinking, that anti-establishment populism thinking, has grown since then. Intensifying national sentiment. Again, this has happened. Certainly, Russia is the big one I'm probably thinking of with this, where you see it. You see there was a large push, and you heard from a lot of Russians. To my understanding, maybe day-to-day Russians don't necessarily agree, kind of, with maybe what their government's doing, but I feel from what I was hearing and seeing, I don't think you get people to go to war that easily if they don't agree with the national sentiment, so I feel like at least when the invasion of Ukraine began, there was a lot of positive national sentiment towards the war there. Maybe that's no longer the case, but it was at some point. Certainly in America, I feel like, we've the national sentiment has been intensified. People very much feel very strongly about current elections. About the 2020 elections. It's things felt intense. So about like our identity as a nation. So absolutely, I feel like that happened. make people feel left behind in their own countries. I think that's certainly happening. I think this goes hand in hand with the next one: introduce highly disruptive technologies. AI has been introduced. I don't know how disruptive it is, but based on the other, at least my day to day, I haven't felt to be disruptive yet. I think the biggest I've heard is that copywriters are out of work now. I have talked to some copywriters who say, yeah, the AI does this now. So I don't know how much that was highly disruptive, but certainly it's you can see where it will be disruptive if it isn't already in the future. Like tech, coders are feeling the squeeze. Certainly, I've heard. They feel like their career may be in jeopardy in the future. Artists feel like they're in a squeeze too. So AI was certainly a highly disruptive technology, I think, and it will continue to be a highly disruptive technology. I don't think Zenith is past it, where large language models will really cause people to lose their income, lose their jobs, and that is disruptive. If people lose their incomes in society, that is a disruptive technology. FL has plenty of articles talking about that. I don't really think we'll get too much into them today. I think maybe one or two of the other articles we're talking about will. But yeah, all in all, I think this is the most succulent picture we can show for what the last video was, and certainly almost everything that we had talked about has come to fruition. That, among some other key articles, I think if you search up SARS in the previous, you'll find them talking about SARS and coronaviruses previously, before COVID. So I think at this point FL is, I've personally told you I believe it, but I think it's silly if you don't believe it. Say what you will. I know there's threads on like ATS and stuff that people talk about quite often. People talk about this on Reddit. I don't follow those really. I just completely follow the site itself, FL, and I think it's just silly if you don't. They've proven themselves to be, somewhat accurate. Again, we're not really here to. I'm not here at least to postulate on who FL is, mainly because I've faced issues in the past with doing that. And Andrew's told me things such as I guess maybe not even to paraphrase, you can't really be sure who they are. And I personally think FL are good people. Andrew and team is. I certainly want to talk to them more than I do and be closer to their mission than I am. But kind of rambling here, but we'll just say essentially at this point in time you should kind of believe in it pretty heavily. It's confirmed, more or less. If you actually have read the articles and have actually looked at it, the things that they're talking about happen in reality. So that sums it up. So let's continue some of the new articles. I'm just going to read through them, and talk about them, much like we did last time. Kind of give my high-level thoughts. I've only read one or two of these pre-hand to kind of generate some thoughts. We'll just go through it. So this is poems from Chantilly, Waverly Hotel, and the Design of the General Test of Social Control from April 25th, 2020. The crisis of 2008 was the crisis of a financial system based on a currency, the petrodollar, that was already overstretched. Instead of recognizing this fact and embarking into a new multipolar financial system, the idiot decided to patch the system and inject into it vast amounts of public money. This did happen, essentially with the Fed deciding to, do QE and buy up, more than half of the bonds in circulation in 2009 through 2012. They decided to borrow a ton of money on the government's dime, which is the public dime. The public's repaying it with their taxes, and decided to put that money towards saving, the banks that, had become overstretched and had collapsed the system. Based on the 2008 crisis. So this did happen. The thing here that this implies to me, at least, is they said the petrodollar. That implies to me the petrodollar is not ended. As of 2008, the system was still, quote unquote, a petrodollar system. And I still believe that we exist in such a system, to the extent of global oil trade being in dollars mainly. We may have more room today. Certainly they are trying to, or we're being maneuvered towards a multipolar financial system. They said, as of 2008, they had not, instead of going to multipolar financial system, they decided to keep the dollar alive. But so we're not there yet, but certainly I think they're moving towards it. I think Bitcoin plays into that. All the other Chantilly poems we read last time, were all about how crypto will overtake the dollar system. I still believe very heavily in that. Say what you will about, crypto and its current price action, and everything, but do believe in a system of altcoins and cryptocurrency, that will kind of help the dollar, bridge the gap between how the world economy functions now and how it should function, in a multipolar system where, there's not one single state that controls the U.S. that controls, the majority of the financial system. Now every state can choose which financial system they want to be a part of with altcoins, and it will be a system about systems, rather than a system about countries. So, but at least to me, that's very interesting, because it implies the petrodollar is still active today, is what this implies. It implies, 2008 patched the petrodollar. It was overstretched for a variety of reasons, mainly, it just, I would imagine the reasons are it could not support the, the global trade in a way that it was supposed to. Some of the challenges with that, if you've heard like the dollar milkshake theory and stuff, are that essentially we have a hard time supporting our own country's, public services, while also not, because we can't really print off as much money as we may want, given that it will, sorry, somebody slammed the door. We cannot print off the amount of money that we may need to fund our public services, given that we are the reserve currency, and that may have global effects, on inflation, because we export inflation since every country uses our currency to trade. So, yeah, small part there, but it sets a good basis for this one. We've heard so many times that the system is going to explode that when it is exploding, we do not see it. It seems we have problems recognizing facts that scare us. These facts are hidden behind COVID-19, the last attempt to inoculate our minds with a permanent fear that will get the army in the streets and will keep us locked down inside our houses, lest we suddenly become aware of what the outbreak really means. So many virtual realities have been created for us that when the crudest reality is here, we are not able to see it. So I think succulently, this paragraph, is just saying, yeah, COVID, essentially the system is not resilient enough to stand up to this global disease. We faced issues in China, with shutting down ports, and suddenly the system collapses, and the way we end up fixing it, we have to go to the last ditch resorts. People said we would never do helicopter money. I myself said that helicopter money would be the end of the economy, and we did helicopter money. We did just straight payments to any American Social Security number, any taxpayer number, got free money for COVID. So we, that it's huge. It's monolithic. The system, essentially, FL here saying the system has collapsed, as we know it, or as we did know it, collapsed, and we're hiding, and I think to a certain extent that's true. I think that's very true. I think people, the system is definitely different. It's nonsensical. The people that money get dispersed to in this current system just really doesn't make sense. People are starving and working super hard, and it's like, we don't need them. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. I say we don't need them because, it's, that's essentially how the rich view things, is like, the system's going through change and there's just hanger-ons, I guess, and I guess maybe we won't get into that, but that's at least, my opinion, kind of. That's how the mega wealthy, who own most of everything, see things these days, So yeah, interesting bit for sure there. In 2000, Iraq started selling oil in euros, and coincidentally, the Twin Towers were demolished in September 2001. In 2002, Iraq changed all of its petrodollars into euros in its vaults. A few months later, the U.S. started its invasion of Iraq began, and oil sales were traded again in dollars. So yeah, this is again showing you how the old paradigm was, or the current paradigm, quote unquote, where we need people holding dollars to keep the dollar stable, to allow us to export our inflation, and continue being in charge of global trade in this polar world. We could not let the Eurozone get ahead. That they're keep your enemies close. Keep your allies close, but your enemies closer. Is the saying. So and I believe we did talk about this last time. But and this has happened to this day. The Eurozone got crushed after COVID. Kind of with that, and I think even many Euro countries were trying to illegally buy oil from Russia, because we sanctioned Russia, from the petrodollar system after they invaded Ukraine. So, Yeah, I think that's very interesting. It really shows, where our priorities are, and that's keeping the dollar on top of the euro. People talk all the time about RMB, and we'll talk about RMB later on in this same post. But it just goes to show our actual enemy here is the euro. We don't want the euro overtaking the dollar. The dollar needs to be on top here. So Iran has launched a weapon far more deadly in the war, a stock market that sells its oil in euros instead of dollars. China, India, and other countries have already shown interest in the new Iranian oil exchange. So I looked this up lightly. It looks to be a plan that was abandoned after 2012. They were going, or after 2020 actually is when they officially abandoned it, to my understanding. But they were going to launch a market where you could trade their oil in other currencies, including RMB and euro. Yeah, and it looks like they, assuming this is what the article was talking about, assumes that they did not go after it. I do believe there were missiles launched at Iran at some points, if I recall, under the Trump presidency. So maybe that helped keep this away. But again, this is furthering that the euros, the dollar's really only competitor. Everything about the global stage is designed to stop. They're not really our ally. We're competing with them for share in global trade. We really are. The euros are our only other enemy, really. In 2011, Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi was overthrown and brutally murdered after his decision to sell oil in euros and introduced the gold dinar. In 2014, Iran, Venezuela, and Russia jointly began the de-dollarization policy, but the final attack begins in 2017 when those countries signed with BRICS, led by China, the sale of oil in wons based on the old gold standard, the standard Nixon broke in 1971. I'm not aware if won is actually, from what I've seen, it's not actually exchangeable to gold, but I did find some interesting things about SHFE, which is the Shanghai Futures Exchange, which is where they decided to start trading oil. It's my understanding that they have very liquid, convertible gold futures contracts. It's my understanding, so I think that's kind of what they mean by that, is that China's ability to, or your ability to trade on the Shanghai Financial Exchange in gold futures and take delivery of that gold is kind of what's supposed to underpin that. China does have quite a bit of gold compared to its market cap, of currency trade on the global exchange. So, I wasn't able to find. I did talk to some investment banking, asset managers, for an investment bank who wrote some articles on this. I did talk to them about this, and it seems that this is something that Iran has been interested in for a long time, and China's moved forward with it. I don't know where people are getting, or I cannot really find much documentation that it would actually be gold signed futures contracts, but it's taken as public knowledge that they will be. So I suppose that's just something that's been talked about between the Chinese government and some of the people with an interest in it. So I thought that was interesting. I did a very deep dive into that. Yeah, I'm looking at China's sale of gold won. Yeah, it's very interesting the way that this article puts it. So and I think it will give us more here. Giving us instructions to set up a detailed program to achieve the quick political destabilization of Brazil and Venezuela. Again, as always with FL, this is just a snippet. Not sure what this is referring to. We shouldn't really speculate, in my opinion. In June 2013, the Fund of Qatar became the owner of 2.95% of the authorized capital of VTB, Russian banked. In September 2016, the owner of 24.99% of stocks of Pulkovo Airport, probably less than 25%, I would imagine, for some financial reporting reason anyway, interestingly enough. In December the same year, it acquired 19.5% of the stocks of Rosenfit and a consortium with Glencore. And in June of 2017, active negotiations on the purchase of 25% share of the independent oil and gas company began, which at this time was under direct American sanctions. Today, the fund widely supports cooperation with the Russian Direct Investment Fund and studies projects worth $6.5 billion. So yeah, as you can, this is just showing how Qatar has the Qatar Investment Fund, which is a sovereign wealth fund funded by the oil money made by the Qatar government, has very direct ties to Russia and invests for Russia, as well, which is interesting, again, because Russia is, from what I can tell, losing in Ukraine. They expect it to be quick blitzkrieg, and it's not, and their economy is taking a hit, their currency took a huge hit, etc. They're cut off from Western markets, so certainly, it makes you wonder if the Qatar fund, I'm sure if I cared enough, I could look up 13F and find out. I'm not super concerned with what Qatar is investing in, just because that's a huge sovereign wealth fund, and I'm not in the know enough to know really what to look at with their 13F. So we're not going to do that really. They were dreaming of a pipeline from Qatar to Europe through Syria, but with the emergence in Syria of the Russian Air Force, the project failed. The pipeline became unrealizable, and Doha quickly changed its current negotiation positions. The oil market crashed in 2014, and Russia was pushed into recession in 2015. Saudi-Russian oil war in 2020 is just an attempt at killing off U.S. shale production. Won't last. But what they don't realize is that until you find a vaccine for COVID-19, you will need to stay idle and off the market. Maybe you find a vaccine in 2 years, but by that time, too many U.S. shale oil companies will be long dead. So this is very interesting. I did quite look at these as well. Particularly, Russian, or I'm sorry, not Russian, U.S. shale production. U.S. fracking was super interesting to look at in 2020. I do know J.P. Morgan took, I believe, delivery of a whole fracking company, because it was just, the sector was kind of collapsing. But we managed to only lose 30% production, and then production actually came back. In fact, we could probably, U.S. total oil production. Oh, I spelled that horribly. Let's go 5 years. I'm sure we can see this. Yeah, look at that. We're back up to where we were pre-COVID. So it's taken a while, but we've not, it's not destroyed. We don't have to import oil, which is essentially, what Russians, the Saudis would want. They would want us to be importing oil from them, to fund their fund their things. FL said before, and it actually has really changed my opinion on Saudi a lot, reading some of the things FL said. But they're essentially a religious dictatorship, under the Muslims, and they're just kind of insane. So, let's hope the Saudis don't kill me like the journalist, for saying that. But anyway, that's. Yeah, very much. And obviously, the part about the vaccine is very interesting too. It seems one of the reasons I no longer have an area to talk about FL is because many of the people who are interested in FL were very right wing, and I don't think they can really stomach things like this. It's very interesting to me. This disconnect. FL can be a very right wing site in some ways. Telling people, particularly like the leftist technocratic. Society of the left is very messed up, and causing huge wealth inequality and going to kill society, and they can say stuff like that, which fits in perfectly, with what at least my understanding of the internet right wing, want. But then it says stuff. All right. But stuff like this, where it's saying you need to, you need to find the vaccine, or you basically can't get society started again, is very, very left wing as well, indicating that, the vaccine's important. So, the deal Russia plus OPEC already showed that cooperation between Moscow and Riyadh can have a serious impact on the global energy market, and a joint and simultaneous departure from the dollar-denominated oil trade by all our countries. Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, China, Venezuela, and others, moreover, can produce a real revolution in the global financial sphere for the benefit of all our countries. Yeah, once again showing that, BRICS countries very much want to leave dollar-denominated oil trade, the same one that we have supposedly toppled, Iraq and Iran for, or gone to war with those countries for. The fact that we started an entire war and went to war with an entire country because they stopped using dollars, very much underpins that point there. U.S. Missile Defense Agency is about to start deploying ballistic missile tracking and interception systems in space in the near future. The development and implementation of a sustainable space sensor architecture should be completed by the end of 2022. So again, this with the Space Force, that was created, this is definitely very interesting stuff. They rely on rapid global strike involving the attack and destruction of critical enemy facilities by non-nuclear weapons anywhere in the globe within an hour of receiving the order. The strike is planned to be launched by hypersonic missiles from sea and air carriers as well as from space platforms, showing us reactivity. In 2018, China at the Shanghai Summit signed all 30-year oil and gas futures contracts in yuan gold with all the producers that have wanted to sell it. And all this dismantling of the unipolar world of the dollar is being combined with the development since 2013 of the so-called New Silk Road, the largest Chinese investment commercial infrastructure plan ever proposed. Not only does it include roads, rail routes, ports, airports, and transport infrastructure, it also includes norms and standards, custom courts, electronic commerce, and countries and continents can be included, from the Arctic to Latin America. If we cannot destroy Greenland, let's buy it. That is supposed to be a quote from Trump, given some of their other articles. We will not go into it. But essentially, they have other articles that say the idiot, quote unquote, wants to buy Greenland, etc. So, pretty interesting here. Again, I've looked very heavily into the Wan Gold thing, particularly with the Belt and Road Initiative. That's a huge part of China's plan in the future. To gain market share in world commerce. Is to develop Africa. Provide Africa with developed economies. And by funding them, and in return, it will increase trade in their currency, and they will be able to buy a lot of the commodities and goods that will be coming out of these African countries, So it's a huge part of their plan, and it does seem to be working. Talking again to asset managers and such about this plan, it seems like they're very bullish on China's ability to pull this off. This, for me, plays up very much the paradigm of the U.S., going into our plan for the future, as far as Forgotten Languages is concerned, is going into sort of a data-driven economy. We want to move into data-driven economies with cryptocurrency, and global trade, etc. And we want to dominate that way. Meanwhile, China is very focused on dominating the old economy. They want the petro yuan, they want the gold-backed yuan, gold-backed RMB, petro RMB, that is their vision. They want to take the dollar's market share. Meanwhile, we're trying to think ahead. We're trying to go, or at least this is the bull case as far as for FL for the U.S. We're trying to take and develop data economies, for the future. We're looking into the future. China can have this market share. They can have the petro yuan, because we're not going to be using petroleum in the future. We're going to be buying data, not petroleum. That's kind of the takeaway here from what I've taken away from this. Any country prefers won gold than dollar paper. This has made Saudi Arabia start selling to China in this currency. The weekend of 6th to the 8th of March 2020, Saudi Arabia stopped with the help of the Russian espionage an attempted coup d'etat organized by a faction of the royal family itself, and has accused the United States of being the instigator. Yeah, so this one I'm not really sure. I kind of looked it up a little bit, but I'm not really sure how this plays into anything, except they're very, BRICS is very close together, and this just drives them closer together. Saudi Arabia, OPEC has only sold oil in dollars, as long as it's been beneficial to them, and they're starting to think, it may not be beneficial to them. They may not want to be beholden to the dollar anymore. In order to authorize denied operations using biological vectors located in South Africa to hit China just in time, when EU states are considering using China's Huawei 5G technology, Italy's Northern League is supporting the Russia-China axis at all recent world summits, and Italy's just bought oil in petro yuan for the first time. Targets are selected on a denied basis. This could be biological vectors located in South Africa. They do have another article claiming that COVID originated from South Africa, so it makes me think maybe it's possible, that this is what they're saying, but I don't want to delve too deep into that, because again, you can never really tell with FL. So I don't think we should look too weak into that. This just again shows, Italy, very important economy in Europe, which is very Western. Italy is one of the bigger economies in Europe, whether or not it's having issues with that and such, like Greece is, it is a bigger economy. So, this kind of shows where that, that polarization is coming from. They're multipolar now, are you in the U.S.'s sphere of influence, or are you in, the BRICS sphere of influence? So, the infection struck a blow to the confidence of unrestrained liberalism in the market, all the victories of which were erased in an instant. Wall Street is gripped by an unprecedented crisis. Hundreds of billions of euros evaporated in just one day. Faith in finance has definitely faded away. Because of the prospect of an American default, Beijing has no choice but to urgently start selling off treasuries. This could completely destroy the U.S. public debt market. Investors will stop buying new bond issues because of the excess supply. I don't believe they ever did this, so maybe that was speculation that would happen. We can look it up, though. China total U.S. Treasury holdings. Oh, it's gone down. Interesting. I wonder. We should probably find a historic chart for this. Let's see. No, that's really old. We don't want that. Yes, he was supposed to be at 1.07. 2022. Ooh, yeah, it is going down. I mean, that's fine. So, one thing to mention with that, at least that I wanted to mention is certainly, um, there is excess supply of U.S. public debt, and that is why it's definitely gone up. The yield on debt, people are selling off bonds. The auctions are not doing as well. Inflation has definitely contributed to it. Real rates were super high. For bonds for a while there. Yeah, I think this is valid. I think this has happened. Whether it destroyed the treasury market, I'm not sure. China is not even the biggest holder of our debt anymore. I think Japan holds the most U.S. public debt. Obviously the U.S. holds the most U.S. public debt as far as foreign countries' holdings of U.S. debt go. I think Japan is one of the highest, followed by some of the eurozone countries. But yeah, China only has 700 billion. They own a lot. They're very dependent on our economy for sure. In more ways than just their holdings of treasuries, but you know, yeah, it's not. I don't think it's cataclysmic. Certainly, if they sold off all 1.1 trillion bonds, it would be cataclysmic. But it looks like they're only selling off, 30% of that, so maybe not cataclysmic. In the end, the design of the COVID-19 general test of social control by denied was a success in that it accelerated the needed changes for the paradigm shift to consolidate. From now on, climate refugees is the next scenario to work up to on the year 2100. So this is an interesting one to note too. Sorry, making sure I was capturing this here. It's an interesting one too because this gives me more leverage, at least to suggest, like we were talking about earlier, that maybe the global disease that was talked about for 2025 in that SV09N plan, was actually COVID. They had to move up the timetable 5 years on that. And that's because they're saying that this was, COVID was the general test, so that would also give give credence. We'll have to see, of course, come 2025, we got another year and 4 months before we know for sure what was going on. I think we could say, certainly, if we don't have another global pandemic by 2025, that the timetable was in fact moved up, and so yeah, climate refugees, very interesting. They do have some articles on that, so I do not believe I'll be around. Maybe I will be, I'll be I'll be over 100 years old by then. But yeah, we'll see. The post-2100 scenario is one in which the Gemnial viruses are released, killing virtually 90% of the world crops. Denied estimates that by 2100, Russia was producing 300 million tons of grain that was totally devastated by the SV17Q-designed Gemnial virus. Yeah, so again, this speaks to, the plan to collapse Earth before we can do too much damage to it, and completely kill off the biosphere. So yeah, this speaks more to that. Gemnial viruses will be viruses that can impact plants. So it will impact grain. Russia still produces most of the world's food. To my understanding, they produce something like 40% of the world's food already. So they may produce even more. By then, 300 million is a lot. So that would definitely impact them and surrounding countries, notably probably China, that would consume a lot of that food. Okay, yeah, that's that one. Let's move on. Poems from Chantilly, Meta-Algorithms and the Belief Propagation from May 26, 2023. Our machine is capable of a huge universe of possible behaviors. The overwhelming majority of them you will never be willing to experience. True. The 69th Bilderberg meeting that took place from 18th to 21st of May 2023 in Lisbon was designed as a test on AI-ruled governance. The puppets were given an initial agenda elaborated by the AI system itself. The joke was the agenda was even alphabetically ordered, but no puppet noticed. In order to have them entertained, the AI system proposed the following issues to be discussed: AI, banking system, China, energy transition, Europe, fiscal challenges, India, industrial policy and trade, NATO, Russia, transnational threats, Ukraine, and U.S. leadership. So, kind of a funny bit there, they're calling them puppets. Obviously, whoever's pulling the strings here, which would be, certainly SV17Q, maybe, or SV17Qs impacting the group that would run this. They obviously organize Bilderberg and are the big important people. They're saying that they are feeding this to an AI system, and letting it choose what to speak about. And then they're calling the people who show up here puppets. So the rulers' meeting was held at Denied 2023 between SV17Q and 3 attendants. The agenda had just 3 points: inflation and interest rates, cloud computing agenda, and war on the multipolar world. At the request of Denied, 2 more items were included: quantum computing and flash droughts. So this obviously shows that there is, this is the meaning of the people who actually matter, the rulers, quote unquote. It's SV17Q, who, again, running stuff. So I think it's a very interesting show. This is what is supposedly actually important. This is held between the rulers, quote, who we should suppose are the people who are ruling everything, and SV17Q, is setting up the agenda to keep Earth safe, is doing all these things, etc. Or SV17Q is running things. So inflation and interest rates. So that's very interesting. That means, that's the actual, important part. The banking system, is not important. What's actually important is inflation and interest rates, which, agreed, it's had a very big impact on our society so far. People say like they feel poor. Inflation was like insane. It was at, cumulative, like, 8%, I think is the official number, as high as like 25%, I've heard, for inflation. And interest rates have risen for the first time in forever. The cost of borrowing, and the cost of lending, are sky high for the first time in 20 years. Which is, so we just, we didn't have those interest rates for 20 years. That was kind of insane. People thought bonds would only go down, and they haven't. So I think it's very interesting, and that's the actual point that they want to talk about. Cloud computing agenda, that one also interests me. A push for people thought we would have been cloud computing already, or at least I thought we were in a cloud computing paradigm, with Amazon Web Services and stuff. I'm very interested, or I'd be very interested to hear, what exactly about cloud computing, because we've talked about VCP previously, on the previous video. So it's interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what specifically they want to talk about. And war on the multipolar world. I don't know what that means. Does that mean they're trying to go to war on the multipolar world, or how will war work, as far as, how's the war with Russia going, etc. Again, be interesting to see. At the request of Denied, which is presumably one of the rulers, 2 more, or it could be another group, 2 more items will include quantum computing and flash droughts. Flash droughts is an interesting one. Again, you should remember from last time, water scarcity is a big point throughout all of FL. It is hammered home time and time again. Water scarcity will become a big issue, that impacts our world. Quantum computing is also very interesting. I'm not big into quantum computing, I don't know if there have been many progresses made. I probably should know more based on this, but, I certainly tried to look it up and learn about it, but it's, kind of above me. I'm very much more financially, I'm a person more geared towards financial markets, over, computing. But, interesting nonetheless. Geopolitics. This is geopolitics. For us, the Asian Pacific region is home to the most cloud data centers. The United States and Canada region has 79. Together, these regions account for 72% of the world's cloud data centers, with Europe housing 24% and Latin America 4%. The United States and China are ranked first and second in terms of total number of availability zones, with 69 and 31 respectively. The analysis shows 87% of the world data centers are located in vulnerable zones. In order to move them to safe zones, we need to perform some changes in the world. So super interesting. This is basically saying, that due to man-made climate change risks, data centers, which will be running, the architecture for society, are at risk, and they need to be moved. I believe they do say how it's moved below, but to cold zones. We've read about in previous ones, they need to be moved to Arctic zones. Submarine data cables are how data is routed around the globe. Anything going from point A to point B must follow these lines, with possible stops in between depending on route. To whom do the underwaters belong? Quote, SV17Q agents went on explaining what deep changes to the backbone of the global economy were required in the midterm. They proposed running an AI-based disruption experiment using Brookfield Asset Management as a test target. So we don't know when this is going to happen, essentially, is my understanding, which is a little concerning because, I did look up Brookfield Asset Management. I haven't seen anything happen with them, so we should keep it in mind, I guess, certainly. What changes will be made using them. They invest heavily, I believe, in CLOs and other and other such private debt, I believe. So that could be what sparks it, possibly private debt. I wouldn't be sure. We'd have to know more, once it happens, of course. Yeah. And they also have, I believe, they bought out their real estate, investment business. So, though they seem to be worried by the fact that staging and framing scenarios using LIAV's AI-designed inflation program would have economic, social, and political implications not sufficiently explored in the practical steps towards better global governance and rules document. Yeah, I guess this means that the inflation scenarios are designed to get society where we want them to be. They are designed by LIAV to, I'm sure, lockstep society towards where you want the outcome to be. Showing an interesting simulation of how Denied program can efficiently and silently shape key input data used by Palantir Technologies Inc. to perform their what-if analysis, thus forcing Palantir to take bad decisions based on data fabricated by Denied. As a proof of concept, they mention how Denied tricked Cadman Group into bad investment decisions, how the AI infected key publications from Axel Springer, which were used to train Denied AI systems, which furthermore extend those bad decisions deep into the decision-making chain. Yeah, so this is very interesting. This is just saying that they used AI to infect AI training, which we've heard about this before multiple times from FL. They're using AI to attack other AI systems to make sure that your decision making is wrong. It's impacted. So interesting stuff there for sure. Their business revolves around insurance solutions. For them, predicting the future is key, and the only way to do that with a warrant to success reduces to create. And the only way to do that with a warrant to success reduces to create the future, to fabricate the future. I'm sure KRR & Co. Inc. is a leading global investment firm that offers alternative asset management as well as capital markets and insurance solutions would hate to know LIAV is just a future manufacturing machine. Yeah, so, that is, insurance is definitely big in the financial markets. If you can control the factors that go into to those premiums, it's free money. So, you're more so charging the market rate that you can get, knowing what everyone else is able to do, rather than, anything else. So, interesting there as well. Deal Capital LLC was not operating as expected. Their decisions were not rational. See, a series of flash droughts that turns a black forest into barren wasteland would have devastating effects on Mr. Thiel's psyche. After all, for a German to see the Black Forest turned into a stony wasteland has devastating emotional effects. It seems that humans only understand that their decisions are lousy when they or their beloved ones suffer the consequences, and especially when the money in their bank account disappears like smoke in the wind. Yeah, so again, very interesting, showing this theme of, climate change as a moving force for humanity, and this one I think is interesting too because it shows, that at least SV17Q, or supposedly whoever the narrator is for this, sees for this bit here, believes that, you need to physically change the world that people know for it to really hit home for them, that they need to make different decisions, drastically. So it seems like they can't really control, Peter Thiel directly, but they, for whatever reason, need to set up these scenarios for him, Do we force a particular policy on the industry, or should we first develop the infrastructure, enact stringent laws, bring in due process law, and subsequently sow the seeds for organic growth of data storage capacity? Yeah, so I'm saying that I just take this as, do we do it the fast way, or do we do it, the slow but steady way? Amazon found every 100 milliseconds of latency cost them 1% in sales. Akamai research found found a 1 second delay results in 7% loss in conversions, while the same study showed a 2 second delay increased bounce rates by 103%. It also showed that 79% of online shoppers won't return to slow sites, hence slowing down the internet is something more than just a nuance for end users. It is a drama for all those top-selling companies. Artificial intelligence and machine learning have taken the wheel and driven us into a data-driven world. Our goal is to flood the network with massive amounts of bad, fake, and wrong data and feed those AI systems with the toxic intake of bad quality data. Today, we have more than 7 million data centers that handle small industrial scale operations. Having the world to operate with a massive influx of toxic data being processed through an artificially slowed down internet means disrupting the global decision making. So yeah, again, this shows this is where they want to move things. I doubt this was what was talked about at Chantilly, but it shows that this is the process they want to take, and this is what they want people to take away. Particularly interesting shows maybe that event with Brookfield Asset Management, is almost certainly some AI that they're running, for investment analysis, probably, make some horrible, investment decisions that, that destroy the company essentially. I also think this bit's kind of interesting just from purely, market point, the fact that, that Amazon knows, how many sales they're going to make based on, your internet speed is very interesting. I'm sure you could find more data on that if you looked deeply. Have the balls to face the truth. You call for a moratorium on the deployment of AI systems not because AI endangers people's privacy and free will. You do it because you have put in our hands sophisticated systems with which we have built fake data generation farms, with which we will flood the internet and crash all your decision-making systems. Just because of that, all your dirty business is based on anticipating the future, for which you need to analyze millions of terabytes of quality data, and now you find that your large language models have allowed us to design AI systems that can simulate reality at our whim, leaving you blind and deaf and consuming junk data that we generate during the night. Yeah, there's so much to this article, but I mean, essentially, this is just telling you, this is how you fight against, what would be, I guess. Whoop. Careful, doggo. This is how you would fight against systems that, AI systems that systematize, the harming of humanity, etc. This is how you would fight against them, is creating your own systems or feeding them bad data, So if you want to, compete against AI systems that will make the right decision every time, or you can train them to make the right decision, you just have to train them wrong, That's how you fight against them. You win the war before ever making a shot, by making sure that they don't learn correctly, so they're going to take the wrong decisions anyway. And then, essentially this has really interesting implications based on some of their AI posts, as far as you won't really know because you're so ingrained into that AI system and letting the AI make the decision, you may not know that it's making incorrect decisions. How can you, if you're so used to letting the AI take it over, if you're not checking the AI, how can you ensure it's making the right decision? You've stopped checking it because it's outside your field of vision, so the AI keeps making these wrong decisions. You are addicted to power, money, to data. LiAV generates billions of terabits that throws in your face and that you sniff like cocaine. And you do it in a world that is degrading by the minute because of your insatiable greed. You get what you deserve. Yes, data is the new oil, etc., etc. It shows, the U.S. is moving towards the data economy, but what happens if the data powering the data economy, is incorrect? What are you going to do to end your addiction? Sew up the mouth with which you inhale your digital crack. Are you going to cut the underwater wires through which your drug travels? We'll tell you what the picture is. Yoda NM1 exhibits 7,200 racks and consumes 50 megawatts of power. Once fully built, the facility will have an overall capacity of 30,000 racks and 250 megawatts of power. Belong to us. Integrate Seattle is the flagship facility of Sabay Data Center. It is located at 35th Ave, South Tukwila, Washington, 98168. It has access to over 70 megawatts of power. Belong to us, together with CoreSite, Reston VA3, Q2S Atlanta Metro, and the Citadel campus. Tulip Data Center, backed by 100 megawatts of power, has the capacity to house 12,000 racks. All of them feed on our corrupted data, and so does the Utah Data Center, built to support the intelligence community's efforts to monitor, control, and suppress individual freedom. The same goes for Digital Reality, who operates over 310 data center facilities. Have a walk around Lakeside Technology Center in Chicago. Go visit Mesa Data Center, Apple's global data command center. What do you see? A large stew pot where toxic future is cooked, composed of poisonous data that we fabricated for you and yours. That's what you see. Yeah, so it's, again, super interesting, showing that, the future of society is kind of shit, honestly, because, at least for those of us who exist probably in first world countries, who are going to be living through the data economy when the underlying, machinations of the data economy are incorrect. So, this kind of, again, builds up to like that Chantilly scenario, and just showing all of it, kind of building to peak. Where are we going as a civilization? We're going to go to war with China. We're going to institute data economies. And at the end of the day, all of us are going to collapse. It's how you destroy society completely. Is what, to my understanding, what the core agenda is. To protect the earth, you have to like completely collapse society. What is expensive about computing these days is, anyway, no longer the computing power to realize it, but the human effort going into its design. You need humans to build and operate your systems. But see, a human is just a bunch of living cells, and living cells are not digital, are not deterministic, are not algorithmically controlled, yet are flexible, robust, adaptable, able to learn, they are situation aware, evolvable, and self-reproducing. But you turned humans into imbecilic robotic sheep because that way you were richer and richer, and now you want those sheep you created to create for you a new world where you are the emperor of the universe. Can you really be such a naive cretin? Yeah, so, you make people stupid, you teach them wrong in school, you build up a society of sheep, and then suddenly you realize, hey, I can't do this, like, we need these people to do this, and, we need people to, run this data economy still. We thought we could get rid of everyone, but we can't. We need people to run the data economy, and we're fucked, so that's kind of what's telegraphing there, in my opinion. I have recommended Denied to invest in the following two companies, Denied and Denied. According to its analysis, flash drought episodes together with an increase in temperatures will make it impossible for current data centers to access water for cooling in the near future. The second company is researching a new innovative water-free cooling system. While I have also recommended to relocate Denied defense data centers to another locations, which were outside our national borders, for which I have designed a military operation in order to secure the new locations. So, interesting point there, basically saying, it's going to be a huge thing in the future, non-water cooled. Again, huge theme we see with Chantilly, water, water droughts in the future, global drought, water insecurity, huge thing. And they're saying, that will also impact data centers, so invest in non-water cooled data centers. I'm going to take a drink here. First conference on AI biophobia. Yes, what if AIs are biophobic? FL was talking about AI before it was cool. Just to let you guys know. Way before it was cool. Okay. The supercomputer is used to create future weather models, and it's specifically tuned to predict global patterns of extreme weather, selecting data center locations that minimize the risks posed by flooding and extreme weather. Not following its recommendation would put at risk some 12 gigawatts of sensible data center capacity currently located in recognized risk zones for hurricanes, floods, and droughts. So that's the end of the article. Just to go over it, it's showing the increasing reliance on AI and technology in our society, showing how we're building up to where all these articles are talking about, like controlled society with toxic data, etc. This is showing the building pieces coming together for some of those other articles in FL, specifically about AI and specifically about the data economy. So good one overall. Apologies if I'm kind of losing focus there. It's getting long. This one plays into what we just talked about quite well, I think. So we're going to talk about it. This is not a Chantilly article, and the next two are not as well. This is just kind of talking about some articles that I think complement. We'll try to go through these pretty quick. I think it's getting a little late here. I don't know how long. 30 minutes on this recording, certainly. The purple market, trading off advanced landscape evolution models and algorithms. To find out whether stable and changed climate predictions differ significantly, a study site is needed. The entire British Columbia was selected as a test area. We set fires under specific conditions in order to gather enough data to feed our models and fine-tune the simulations. The test area was used from 2008 to 2009, when we moved to new test areas and Denied. In 2011, we ran our tests in Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico before finally moving to California, where we put our models at work. We learned a lot from the tests in California and Oregon, but we needed to still push our models a bit further. All in all, we can now create powerful, detailed, and precise predictions of the dynamics of the modeled landscapes, and these predictions are used to elaborate our future geostrategic actions. It is essential for us to know how the landscape will look like in 2100, how the natural resources will be distributed, where the masses of water will be located, how desertification will shape our landscape, and what actions we need to take today in order for those resources to be under our control tomorrow. So this is outlining, tying in to that last article we read, very important, detailing just how important, the physical landscape of climate change will be in the future. Again, a huge theme of water reliance. This here just says it for water. In the last article, it tied it to how water will be important for computing facilities. Maybe cheaper or less cheap. To run water. You may want to be in colder areas. Running water. Cooling for your data center, that's controlling your entire smart city, or you may want to be in, an area with no water in it, it's maybe in a drier area and you'll want to use non-water cooled solutions for your data center, so super interesting, kind of play there between the last one, this article though is just more raw, how this is how the environment, we expect all these factors of the environment to be impacted, and if we can control those, we will come out on top. The black market you referred to is a second-class market. The one where you can sell and buy precursors for amphetamines production, government databases like IDNet, looks like Secure Flight, Codes, advanced weapons, SCADA malware, zero-day exploits for critical systems, or even specific records of the denied overseas wiretapping database. You name it, we use that market to fund our projects. But the market I'm talking about is the purple market, in which one of the most sought commodities are landscape evolution models. So yes, really interesting to me. I kind of have tried to look this up. I can't find the market that they're talking about, which obviously if this is underground, it only applies to, a few, government entities with seemingly too much money on their hands, very interesting. So that's what the rest of this article is going to talk about, is that purple market of landscape evolution models, but it's kind of interesting. I don't know much about the other markets except, from what I've seen about zero-day exploit markets, like these are real things, precursors for drugs, yes, those are black markets that exist. As we understand it, future climate change will influence the processes that shape our landscapes. Hence, knowing this influence is important to make long-term land use decisions. By land use, I mean taking by force those territories where we expect to find water in the future. So again, water reliance, huge theme. That's going to be a lot of what we're saying with this article. It's super important, especially because their predictions are that there will be massive contaminations of water sources, The team of analysts attached to SIGAD US 984XN reported that they had intercepted communications concerning the interest by Denied to buy NARIS ST6400 hardware from Denied. The higher rank officer told the team to simply ignore that communication. Yeah, so that's ostensibly somebody receiving, communication from other, countries, maybe, to buy, hardware from some government, and they're just telling them, ignore that, because they know it's going to fund black book activities. Yeah, digital technologies don't care about the source of money, correct? This is a big problem with our financial system. There's no, credit ratings are only as good as, money, it makes no distinction where you got it from. $1 gain from killing somebody is the same as, $1 gain from hard work. So, in my opinion, that's at least part of the issue with our financial system to a degree. Labs generated data stored at Bumble Hive in Utah. The data is merged with that generated by Denied and its Bala data center. It is the best model we have about how the planet will look like in 2100, and it includes the corrections we need to make to current world events in order to comply with the model. So yes, in a way, you can say we sort of craft the present to arrive to a future that matches the model. Yeah, so concerning, specifically because these are models of climate change, so they're changing things to make sure that the climate ends up how they want it to, which is messed up. Wondering whether the recent wildfires on U.S. and Australia's soil were all part of the future landscape prediction programs, as they all show exactly the same pattern cadence as the FLPP demands for the test areas. So is there still, predictions ongoing with wildfire setting, To achieve stipulated objectives, we need water systems to be managed in an integrated global way. Nation-states are to disappear because the very concept of nation-state is primitive and retarded. We won't make it beyond year 2230 if we don't take actions right now. And if those are 2230, if we don't take actions right now, and if those actions include changing landscape, bioengineering the entire population, lying about Denied, we will do it. Species survival is something you cannot leave in the hands of other species, no matter how benevolent or advanced they are. Get it? Yeah, so saying, essentially, more of what FL says a lot, which is that, you know, our military presumably is where the snippet comes from, where our modern leadership is where this comes from, and they're very much, we don't care about aliens, the aliens, we don't care if they're real or not, because we're focused on ourselves, and this society. Knowledge is power, therefore, is considered to be a key asset, one that must be under our control, organized, and monitored. Information technology plays an important role in knowledge sharing, hence we keep it under tight control. However, the most sensible and vital asset is landscape. Future landscapes will rule the world, much as current landscapes do today. That's why future landscape modeling is a highly suppressed technology, one that we don't allow to fall into the wrong hands. Yeah, so again, trying to rig the game, so they win, essentially, always, and that is justified, because if we don't win, society could collapse, etc. And again, with the water, future landscapes, they're very concerned about water sources, fresh water sources will be super important to run the economy. So again, just very much, keeping with the last article, it's very, climate change is a big issue with FL, huge one. This one I think kind of plays in more with the AI and kind of tech and like future society, so we're going to read some of this. The geocultural brothel, culturally engineered totalitarian societies. To know the God who knows all is not the same as knowing all that God knows. Interesting quote there. Perception AI is beginning to blur the lines separating the online and offline worlds by dramatically expanding the nodes through which we interact with the internet. As perception AI gets better at recognizing our faces, understanding our voices, and seeing the world around us, it will add millions of seamless points of contact between the online and offline worlds. Those nodes will be so pervasive that it no longer makes sense to think of oneself as going online. But this is not enough. We want the user to not even notice any difference between the offline and online world, and cannot be achieved if we couple perception AI with synth streams and ASC drugs. We call this concept chemo AI. That is, an artificial intelligence which takes advantage of a previously conditioned user, namely, a user's brain has been altered by psychoactive drugs in order to induce an altered state of consciousness, which nicely complements the AI experience. Obviously, we are here talking about non-incapacitant substances, such as denied and denied, which are sonochemically activated. Sonochemicals are chemicals that are activated by sound. Obviously, people should know that, but that's very interesting. So I essentially, what this means. I tried to look up this. If anyone can find this chemical, by the way, I'd be super interested to know what it is. I've tried to look it up sometimes. But I think this is very interesting, to break it down. Essentially, I think the seamless points of contact between the online and the offline worlds, that's a very important point. You already see that today, like QR codes are like the start of that, it's like the online world and the offline kind of like, and that's, when you're opening up your web browser, but really the idea of this is just very, it's very interesting. It digs very deep down, into entire psychology, I think, a little bit. Because you can envision a world where you're not aware if you're online or off. There's no longer a meaning to being online. You just always are. That's just life to you. So I think that's super interesting to think about. Chemo AI is interesting too. I presume it's chemo. It's called chemo AI because they're priming you with drugs for the AI to target your brain specifically, which is a really interesting idea. Like if for whatever reason AI will be able to target you better, in certain states than others, because it will be able to mold your thinking patterns more efficiently, is my understanding with that. So, interesting stuff in general. Kind of setting the groundwork for this article. After investing millions of dollars in virtual reality technologies, we concluded it was easier to use specific drugs in order to bring the rich sensory reality of the offline world online. So yes, again, so I think this is interesting. At least it makes sense to me, at least on a surface level. That rather than have a bunch of tech, like I would imagine it would be stuff like a brain implant or something, Neuralink or whatever, rather than have that, projecting images into your head. It's easier to mold your mind to accept, the images that, a screen is showing you as reality. I think that, drugs like I'm thinking of, Disassociatives maybe, might be able to do something close to that. You can just, you're very in a suggestible state, and you can be convinced, that what you're seeing in your limited field of view, is all that there is to see. So it makes sense to me. We don't need to train our soldiers in a desert where we have replicated an Afghan village anymore. We don't even need a hologram. The soldiers simply lay in bed and we administer them carefully designed synth dreams that get them into real Afghan landscape. For all intents and purposes, the soldiers find themselves dreaming a hyper-realistic dream, a dream in which they find themselves fighting hostile forces in a remote location, all without leaving the room. And what the fuck do these civilian assholes want now? Our technology to recreate virtual shopping malls? Our synth dream drugs to make them an entertainment and recreational item? Our technology to use in their stupid video games? So yeah, obviously this is, the military saying, yeah, look at what we've made. It's really, these are the synth dream drugs, and they're saying, yeah, well, the capitalists want them to make items, which, so these are the drugs, obviously, that they're talking about, before. I think it's interesting. I've looked it up. I don't really see, I haven't seen anything like this, I think it'd be interesting, though. I mean, we'll talk about it more. Let's keep going. Get it right, son, and make no mistakes here. We don't want corporate America or China to know too much about what we're up to. Everything we do here is done to confront a threat that you have no fucking idea about, and one you will never have any knowledge of. We don't create products, we create realities. Forget that technology transfer bullshit for your own good. So, yeah, I think this is super interesting. Yeah, overdose deaths involving, this ties into the opioid epidemic very heavily. In my opinion, it's showing very interestingly, what the... Well, that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that LA has a low amount of opioid deaths. I would have thought they had more. Interesting. This kind of shows, they're trying to set up the next, the next stage of society. They don't, really care so much. They don't care about making money. They're not in it for money. They print the money. They're in it for setting up, the next paradigm, so that way they can control everything and things will fall into place how they want them. That's what they're in this for. That's what at least the military is in this for. China was already defeated twice in the Opium Wars. Let's see now if they will resist the epidemic of new drugs we're going to flood them with. We could start with Shenzhen, but we prefer to start deploying our epidemic in Vietnam and Indonesia, which are the places where China finds cheap labor. We want to replicate there what we did here with oxycodone, though this time we'll use synth dream drugs. This is what Project Denied is all about. That's all we are asking for. It is not about technology transfer. We are here. It is all about asking your help to implement our plan. As we see it, Project Denied will put third world sweatshops stocked with armies of low-wage workers out of business. That's precisely China's weak point. They depend on the cheap labor force of Indonesia and Vietnam. It is something robots and AI would do in the future anyway. So, yeah, super interesting. They're saying we learn a couple of things here. It shows the opioid epidemic up here and down here. It's saying, this was intentionally launched upon America and meant to be devastating to American society, which it has done for the most extent, definitely, fentanyl, huge in the news, the opioid epidemic, people consider the opioid crisis, people consider a huge issue in America, and it is really, we lose a ton of potentially valuable citizens to drugs every year, and they're saying they're going to do that to China, in the opium wars again. So, this time it's time to take China out. The people who, create society for whatever reason, America has been collapsed enough, it's time to collapse China, I guess, is kind of the takeaway here, at least for me, and very interesting. So I keep my ear to the ground all the time for new drugs coming out of Indonesia and Vietnam from this article in particular. This article was, 2022. Since then, every once in a while I will look up, see if there's anything interesting, Google and Tesla must join forces, period. We don't want them fighting against each other, but if those guys find it hard to understand our requirements, we have means to make us understood. We are sure they do not want to know what these means are. Yeah, so essentially, get in line, guys. Get in line, Do you know how dangerous a ragtag bunch of insurgents can be when battling a monolithic foreign giant? Do you have the slightest idea of how bad a war between the haves and have-nots can become once they have-nots have learned how to flash UEFI chips with malevolous code, backdoors, and Trojans? Did you forget how explosive a problem economic inequality and class-based resentment is? I thought this one was interesting too. So it seems like, from my limited knowledge, of course, with computer science, that you can flash, there's signed firmware on UEFI and you need some specific hardware to re-flash it. So I guess you'd have to buy It's something that I was reading about, but they're kind of expensive. But you have to buy something particularly to flash a UEFI chip, and if you wanted to flash it with similar software, you'd have to find a way to sign the software. So it seems like kind of a complicated issue, But yeah, you could definitely see, if someone figured that out, especially, let's say someone in China, who's in a factory who makes or in Taiwan, who's in a factory who makes your chips, or people who assemble BIOS boards in China, if they were able to do that, maybe they flash all your chips before they send them out of the factory, and then if we're in a crypto-based system, suddenly the computer you just bought, backdoors into your wallet, takes your life savings, and you're done. So, that I could see it happening for sure. Very interesting paradigm they're proposing there. How profitable would Uber be if it had no drivers, or Apple if it didn't need factory workers to make iPhones, or Walmart if it paid no cashiers, warehouse employees, and truck drivers, or Huawei, or Xiaomi, or Miotin? And if those who can be drivers, cashier programmers, or factory workers are vomiting blood with fever and tremors in the corner of any poor neighborhood in the city? So yeah, just showing, we can get China addicted, and that will collapse their society. These are potentially productive citizens that instead are addicted to drugs, and destroying their society. So when the Chinese can do everything that we can, what does it mean to be American? And when machines can do everything that we can, what does it mean to be human? True. I remember that meeting. The Silicon Valley entrepreneurs were talking about how their products were vital for democratizing access, connecting people, and of course, making the world a better place. The SV-17Q officer stood up from the table, looked out the window in silence, and the room went dark. Images were projected on the monitor. Some of them were satellite images revealing that China was building a concrete runway on the Spratleys, and it would be capable of handling military aircraft, including fighter jets and surveillance aircraft. Another image showed an artificial island on top of Hughes Reef in the Spratleys. Then he said, "You see, the Chinese are democratizing access, connecting people, and making the world a better place too." Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. It's showing very much like it's trying to show these American entrepreneurs like what the military at least what SV-17Q considers important. They're like, sure, you can be doing all these great things, but you can still lose. Look at what China's building. They're not far behind you. They're focusing on other things. They're focusing on war. They can democratize by killing you. So we have the capability of hacking into our own banking system and compromising data. We can perform a targeted one-day attack on our own American credit card companies just now from this room. And we can do it because, although it would be hurting to us, it would be even more hurting to them because as prime owners of American debt, they are deeply invested in the U.S. economy. Therefore, yes, Chinese sabotaging it would make no sense, but it would make total sense if we did it ourselves. Please meditate on my words before uttering any bullshit. Yeah, so, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. China does not own too much American debt. Hey, buddy. Sorry, doggo. China does not own too much American debt, in my opinion, at least 700 billion, while a lot, it would be crippling to their economy, sure, if they lost that amount, but it's not, huge in my opinion. So a little bit, not convinced fully of that, but certainly, yeah, it makes sense, particularly because I'm not sure about the equity holdings. Maybe Chinese firms own a ton of equity in the U.S. I don't know too much, but it may be enough that, it would really hurt them if they, maybe they own more corporate debt than public debt, but yeah, this makes total sense to me, we could, there are cases where you can weigh the economic effects, and that's sort of like the modern day mutually assured destruction, to my understanding, is that the rich are all investing in each other's economies, so we don't blow each other all up, because as long as the rich keep getting richer, they have got no reason to force people to use the nukes, because it benefits them, since they own in all the major economies, share. So, yours is a fully culturally engineered totalitarian society in a declining civilization. Nothing personal, it's just that history is a business too. Yeah, so good quote to end this with, in my opinion, it's, futures for sale, same as anything else, you man enough to go and buy it, Let's get to our last article of today. Getting to be a long video as well, but it's been good so far. I think we've gotten to go over a lot of good points and read a lot of good articles. Again, apologies, if I'm being kind of slow today, but I appreciate you making it this far. We'll hopefully do more of these in the soon, near future. In order to be able to look at things, you have to give up eating them, but capitalism eats everything, even the future, in particular, your future. carefully chosen set of world policies designed to stop population growth and stabilize material consumption could avoid collapse, and it is our view that population control is a decision we should adopt today, in particular when we all agree that climate change, rate of biodiversity loss, and changes to the global nitrogen cycle are already a lost cause. There's nothing we can do to revert those parameters back to safe levels. Therefore, stabilizing the global population is and will remain necessary. So yes, interesting bit here, presumably from SB17Q. The big thing with them, is we need to stop the collapse of Earth, due to extreme climate change, and they're kind of saying, yeah, so biggest thing is, population growth needs to stop. Interestingly enough for this, it does not affect first world countries as much, to my understanding, because population is mostly growing currently in Africa, which is where China is once again investing heavily, with Belt and Road, and India still, I believe, is growing. To my understanding, maybe they've leveled off, but yeah. The extreme predictability of certain conditions in the environments of parasites has resulted, over the course of evolution, in the fixation of adaptive behaviors in parasitic species, such as humans, that enable them to reach inappropriate habitats in their hosts. In our analysis, humans' hosts are both other humans and Sol 3 itself. We conclude that humans, as parasites, make the same decisions that every animal makes regarding food acquisition, shelter, and reproduction. In their predictable environment, many of these decisions are also fixed. So, yeah, kind of an interesting little one. Basically, they're saying humans are parasites, that utilize other humans, and the planet as its host. So essentially, it's comparing human society to a parasite, which it could be fair. Parasites are not bad in nature, of course. They're kind of necessary sometimes. They can be very symbiotic in some ways. So, generally parasites are connotated negatively, but it doesn't need to be that way. In this scenario, I'm sure it is very negative, but, it does not need to be. The remedies for Earth's newly diagnosed degenerative disease are not only global, they are also behavioral. And the need to manage human impacts on the global commons will now literally require hundreds of millions of people, not just rooms full of experts and political leaders, to do something or stop doing something. Yeah. So this is something that, I've held for a long time, which is that people don't realize just how much, people love to pass the buck. It is not my decisions, that are impacting the way that things are. I'm, blame the mega wealthy, etc. I've done it too. I think a lot of people do. You tend to blame the most visible, people for those problems, but it's saying, this is literally everybody's problem. It's no longer can just policy alone really fix these things. Like literally millions of people have to go out there and make the decision, hey, we're going to manage climate change, by not doing these things. FL never really says, at least in my opinion, I've not read anything that says distinctly what, we should be doing beyond not destroying the planet. But I'd be interested to hear if they did make an article like that, what we could actually do in our day-to-day life to mitigate the impact. Certainly things like not driving cars, I'm sure, is on there, etc. But, unfortunately I can't drive over the bike over the mountains to work. So, You are entering a terminal stage in which your inherited wisdom about ownership and property rights and national sovereignness simply does not apply. The makeup of the global economy is the entire planet, and the entire planet cannot by its nature be bought and sold, given or received, yielded up, seized, or appropriated. It has to be shared. Either learn how to give up your stupid ideas about property and ownership, or you are all doomed. Yeah, so I think this is a fairly impactful statement, saying, we need to share the planet, and capitalism is not working because you cannot own the planet. One person cannot be, cannot own or be in charge of, all these issues. So, the people that say that they are kind of conmen, essentially. So, face it, your marvels of space satellites have not narrowed the gap between rich and poor. They mostly enable the affluent to work with each other more efficiently and prepare for more efficient sky-based killing fields. Yeah, sky-based killing fields, not sure about that in the sense that, it's certainly sky-based to be with drones and stuff. We're seeing a lot of drone warfare and modern warfare, as far as the Ukraine war goes. Not sure. Not sure just how much, but certainly I agree with that. That's kind of a big theme of FL is, you're in a technocratic society, and in modern society, and all of this tech, all it's doing is continuing to grow that, wealth gap. So, No, the problem is not a geoengineering problem. No, the problem is not just about demography. The problem is to manage human behavior in the global commons, and this is where we're expecting you to find new forms of international cooperation. You failed. You just keep doing the same things that led us to where you stand now. You are a parasitic species with a parasitic mindset. Remember this, you'll all die before Caltech is 200 years old. Yeah, so, um, maybe thrown back to the last one a little bit, we're not, there's something to be said about diversity, we're not really, finding ways to make everybody equal. Wealth inequality is only getting worse, so really, how can we be fixing things if these big problems are just getting bigger, and people are not, doing their part, we're not really finding solutions. So, you know, um, now the future is coming towards us. It has turned around and is advancing as bodies and things like a freight train that we cannot stop. It faces us. It does not give us a break. It does not let us rest. Yeah, very much hitting home the point, at least to me. I really like this short paragraph just because, it's very true. The future's coming quickly, and, we're not, you may think you have enough time to fix things, and you really don't. It just hits you like that, so. Uh, it is a time of insatiable voracity. Nothing can stand for too long. The system depends, for its subsistence, on the total recycling of all that exists. And the fact is that things, submerged in the unhinged mercantile speed, are not really things, but mere fetishized entelechies that slide into our hands without our being able to grasp them. Things, which are hardly such, never become human things, because they are discarded before they become part of a human world. It is a cycle of infinite renewal, a total expiration, in which everything is born with the vocation to die and be consumed, in which everything moves and nothing is. It is an experience of liquefaction. The internet has come too late for what it could possibly have become, and the AI has come much too late. The tangible consumer culture won out over competing contenders for the future of humankind, so the internet cannot expect much more from people than what the people had made the new median system into. A virtual shopping center accessible at all times and places, with a few niches consigned to social creativity and political education, niches that, surrounded by advertising and subject to the laws of the attention economy, ultimately serve as supply chains for the neoliberal social model. Same holds for the AI. It has become just a tool for people to think that they are creating music, art, or even make them believe they're high-level programmers. So really quick, the previous paragraph here, I think this is very poetic. This is one of the reasons I wanted to share this article. These ones really resonate with me a lot these days, where FL has kind of very poetic, flowy languages. These and some of the Noria posts, just very, very poetic language that I really appreciate, I think. This is giving a very visceral image to me, of a system collapsing, they have a really good article maybe that I will read next time just recently that they did, in fact, that like talking about, the plague, and the plague in the 13th century, and how, the merchants have brought the Black Plague, and it's what they deserve, and how could a society that sells people into slavery, and is just all about consumerism, how can it, the rat is its perfect idol, for such a society, and it's really good. I should just read the article instead of talking about it, but this reminds me a lot of it, is one of the reasons too that this article is very good in my opinion, it gives you just a very visceral image of the world that we live in from a different viewpoint, one in which society is going to die, because we are fully immersed in, mercantile corporatism. And then this one, of course, it's saying, they've said other on. So, yeah, yes, very much, that this is what the internet has become, a virtual shopping center, that's Amazon, Temu, I guess, as far as the Chinese go, some of the biggest companies in the world, all online shopping, I don't know which niches would be social creativity and political education, but certainly, there are parts of the internet very infrequently that you can find real discussion these days. Most people, I think, would agree the internet's become very corporatized, so I think that's a valid viewpoint. Stop wasting your time believing the stupid fantasy that social interactions within digital networks might help us overcome poverty, the alienation of labor, loneliness, or global warming. Keep doing what you've been told to. play your video games, bomb this or that city with your fancy drones, buy some ringtones, some ridiculous and expensive clothing, watch football, amateur porn, and cat videos. And if you still feel depressed, let the AI makes you feel as the fucking best rapper in town or as the most creative artist or whatever childish dreams happen to be. You are free, as in free market. That's as far as your freedom goes. So this is, I think, a very interesting paragraph for sure. The free market is the only freedom we get has really resonated with me for sure. It's certainly, I think it to be true. In modern society, you can buy anything you want. Your capital is free to go to any country you want it to go. It's not, there's no restrictions on your capital. Certainly only the rich have capital, really, which is, kind of part of their argument here. But, your capital is free to go wherever. It's completely free. Hey, dog. It's completely free. But that's it. You've got plenty of political restrictions around you, what you can and can't do, etc. So, and certainly this one does resonate with me, it's basically saying, all these people telling you that, these social networks, these digital networks, will uplift society, they're wrong. They're keeping you placated, just keep doing what they're meant to do. They're meant to placate you, and keep you locked in, etc. So very interesting. I also quite enjoy this picture. I have it saved on my phone, use it from sometimes. So changing the world might be hard, but it's not necessarily complicated. You just need to change people's minds. The market knows how to do it because, in the end, your detailed understanding of social life is just a byproduct of the market's infiltration of your bodies and minds. I really resonate with this one, too. The market very much is the ultimate, decider of... Oh, sorry. Very much is the ultimate decider of what... it does know you better than you know yourself in a lot of ways, is what I'm trying to say there. That's its point in existing, is innately to understand what you're going to do before you do it. That's how it controls the money flow. The market knows what you're going to do, it knows what you're going to buy, it knows what you're thinking, it knows what you're going to do, how you're going to turn out, before you do. Your life's kind of controlled by it, and that's just the systems we decide to put in place as a society. So, very interesting article in my opinion. I thought it was worth sharing. I think that's all we have for today. I'm gonna wrap it up here pretty quickly, I think. Sorry as well. Apologies if this wasn't the best video. Kind of went to work earlier today, a little bit tired. I just felt like today was maybe the right day to get one out. I wanted to get another video out, even though it's been 4 years. Pretty much at any cost. So we went over those. I think we'll do another video soon. Hopefully, I will put some more videos out. It's definitely FL such a big part of my life. At this point, it would feel weird if nobody really knew that, and it feels like nobody really knows that. So, figure we'll get this one out there. Again, please reach out to me, Saduri, on Discord. If you wish to speak about anything in the videos or talk more in depth, I love FL again. I've been looking at them for 6+ years. I think I have my own unique view on the website. Pretty much everyone else I talk to, for whatever reason, is really ingrained in the pre-existing kind of Reddit, 4chan, ATS kind of viewpoint on FL, and for whatever reason, they're really not able to get their heads out around. It's becoming more popular, I think, to take my view, because you can see so much of the English portions of this is just correct, So I think it's becoming more common for people to take my viewpoint, which is just kind of, read the stuff, read what they're talking about, and line it up. It's hard. One thing to mention is they've got 4 different posts on what happened to MH370, which was the plane that went down, that nobody could find for such a long time. They've got 4 different posts explaining not everything you read on FL is true, because it's not keyed into this timeline, quote unquote, is my understanding of why it may not be true. So take it with a grain of salt, but certainly some things are relating to our current reality, so you can take them at fairly face value. So anyway, please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to go through some, talk with you just in general. So hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back with some others. Maybe I'll try to make them more succulent. I just wanted to get something out there again, kind of a back to YouTube. So hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.